British blues musician John Mayall OBE, whose influential band the Blues Breakers was a springboard for stars including Eric Clapton, has died aged 90. The songwriter died at his home in California on Monday surrounded by his family, a statement on his Instagram page said. Health issues that forced John to end his epic touring career have finally led to peace for one of this world's greatest road warriors, it said. John Mayall gave us 90 years of tireless efforts to educate, inspire, and entertain, the statement added. John Mayall was born on November 29, 1933 in the town of Macclesfield in Cheshire. His father, Murray, was a talented guitarist and jazz enthusiast, and the young Mayall was quickly drawn towards the sound of the blues musicians from the Mississippi Delta. While in his teens, he completed a George Formby Teach Yourself ukulele course, as well as teaching himself how to play piano. He did his national service in the Army, which included a tour of duty in Korea, before enrolling at Manchester College of Art. Mayall quickly gained a reputation as something of an eccentric, building a massive treehouse in his grandparents' back garden, where he lived with his fiancée Pamela. He had also bought himself an electric guitar and begun playing with a series of local bands, something he continued to do when he found full-time employment in a local commercial art studio. In 1956 he formed the Powerhouse Four, which made something of a name for itself at local dances. He joined a band called Blues Syndicate in 1962, which was heavily influenced by Alexis Corner, whose Blues Incorporated was pioneering what would become the 1960s British blues revival. Corner persuaded Mayall to move to London and take up music as a full-time career. He also introduced Mayall to key contacts on the London club scene and helped him to find gigs. In 1963 Mayall's band, now renamed the Blues Breakers, began regular performances at the Marquee Club, a venue that would prove the springboard for many famous bands including the Rolling Stones and The Who. A canny businessman, Mayall would often stand outside the venue counting audience numbers to ensure he received a fair share of the ticket money. Mayall was already showing himself expert at spotting talented musicians, and his lineup featured John McVie on bass, who would later help form Fleetwood Mac. His debut album, John Mayall Plays John Mayall, was released in 1965, a live set recorded at a West Hampstead R&B club. The album was not a success and his short-term contract with Decca expired. At the same time he recruited Eric Clapton, who had just quit the Yardbirds over their decision to abandon the blues for a more commercial style. The presence of Clapton, already an acknowledged star, raised the profile of Mayall's band. However, the frequent arrival and departure of musicians began to dog the Blues Breakers. Clapton made an unannounced 3-month trip to Greece in August 1965, leaving Mayall with the problem of finding a new guitarist. His troubles multiplied in October when bassist John McVie was fired. Because of his heavy drinking, he was replaced by Jack Bruce. Mayall finally found a guitarist in Peter Green, who spent just 3 days as a blues breaker before Eric Clapton returned and Green was summarily dismissed. At the same time Jack Bruce walked out after a row over his wages and Mayall was forced to rehire John McVie. In March 1966, Decca was persuaded to re-sign the Blues Breakers and they recorded what would be Mayall's first studio album. Determined to cash in on the popularity of his talented guitarist, the album was entitled Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton. Fans would later dub it the Beano album because of the comic Clapton is shown reading on the record cover. The album was well received, reaching 6th place in the charts and providing Mayall with the commercial breakthrough that had previously eluded him. The album was still riding high when Clapton announced he was quitting to form Cream with Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker. Mayall persuaded an initially reluctant Peter Green to rejoin the band and he featured as the guitarist on Mayall's next album, Hard Road, released in 1967. It was to be Green's only appearance on a Blues Breakers album, the cover of which featured a painting of the band done by Mayall himself. The band's lineup continued to change as musicians left for other projects and Mayall discovered new talent. Mick Fleetwood, Ainsley Dunbar, Mick Taylor, and Keith Hartley were just some of the names that passed through the band during 1967, although many had quit by the time Mayall released a solo album, The Blues Alone. Eric Clapton once commented, "John Mayall has actually run an incredibly great school for musicians." A strict disciplinarian, Mayall ruthlessly fired band members who he felt were not up to his exacting standards. In 1968 the band began a U.S. tour which featured a gig at the legendary Fillmore West in San Francisco alongside Jimi Hendrix. Following the release of Blues from Laurel Canyon in April 1969, Mayall dropped the Blues Breakers name and his new lineup experimented with playing without drums. The acoustic album, The Turning Point, recorded at the Fillmore East in New York by the new lineup, earned Mayall's only gold disc. The 70s saw Mayall move to live in the United States, and form a series of bands with American musicians. He moved away from the electric blues that had made his name, and began experimenting with funk, pop, and jazz. He continued to tour in the UK, however, often backing U.S. blues legends such as John Lee Hooker and Sonny Boy Williamson. In 1979 a fire destroyed his home in Laurel Canyon and he lost his master recordings, his diaries, and much of his career memorabilia. The influence of the blues had declined in the UK but, by 1982, Mayall decided the time was right to reform the Blues Breakers. John McVie and Mick Taylor rejoined their old boss for a short time and the enthusiastic reception received by the band encouraged Mayall to put together a more permanent lineup. Mayall continued to tour and record throughout the 1990s and the arrival of Texas guitarist Buddy Whittington in 1993 added a new dimension to the band's sound. In 2003 Mayall celebrated his 70th birthday with a concert in Liverpool that featured some of his former musicians including Eric Clapton and Mick Taylor. In a career spanning 7 decades, John Mayall released more than 50 albums and included some of the foremost musicians of the day in a bewildering series of line-ups. He never achieved huge commercial success in his own right, but his dedication to keeping the blues alive was a major influence on the rock explosion of the 60s and 70s. Mayall was credited with helping to develop a blues revival among white musicians in England, and has been described as the godfather of British blues. Mayall told The Guardian in 2014 that at the time, the scene in America was racially segregated, but in Europe and England the black blues began to be heard by an audience that was not listening to them in America. After their 1966 album featuring guitarist Clapton, the Blues Breakers were acclaimed by music critics as one of the world's most influential blues bands. He told The Guardian he managed to pick out some pretty special people, choosing band members based on the specific sound he was after. He was made an OBE Officer of the Order of the British Empire in 2005. Mayall is survived by his 6 children, 7 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren, the family statement said. He is also surrounded with love by his previous wives, Pamela and Maggie, his devoted secretary, Jane, and his close friends, it added. We, the Mayall family, cannot thank his fans and long list of band members enough for the support and love we were blessed to experience secondhand over the last 6 decades. Thanks for watching my video. Please subscribe my channel and support me for more interesting news.